Okay, welcome. Welcome to the last chapter that will be on Test 1. We will start Chapter 26 today in this module, and we'll finish it up when we meet in person on the next time. So Chapter 26 deals with phylogeny in the tree of life. So we've been talking about evolution. Now we're going to get close up and personal with the tree of life. All right, so this chapter has to do with systematics. So what is systematics? Well, first we need to know what taxonomy is. Taxonomy is the naming and classification of organisms. Let's go back up here for a minute. This is something that you might have learned about in grade school or high school, the taxonomic groups. Each taxonomic group is called a taxon. And traditionally, the largest taxon was the kingdom. So there's kingdom. A kingdom has several phyla in it, and each phylum has several classes in it. So it goes kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. Maybe you learned some little mnemonic about King Philip in high school. My favorite mnemonic is Kings play chess on fat girls' stomachs. It's memorable, right? Now, what scientists have decided, if you looked at that little animation, is that you have more in common with a mushroom than archaea have in common with bacteria. So they decided to make a new taxon called a domain, which is bigger than even a kingdom. And currently there are 3 domains. So now I changed the mnemonic to dumb kings play chess on fat girl stomachs. All right, so that's taxonomy. Phylogeny denotes the evolutionary history and relationships of a species or a group of species. And so what is systematics? Systematics combines taxonomy with phylogeny. In other words, it's connecting our classification scheme with the evolutionary history, evolutionary relationship of organisms. So that's the goal here. Now, modern systematics, modern classification includes utilizing fossil evidence and biochemical evidence. But the gold standard, of course, is DNA evidence, because obviously if you're looking at evolutionary relationships, the DNA would be the most important piece of evidence. Sometimes hard to get, but nevertheless very important. All right, classical taxonomy was originated by a man, Carolus Linnaeus. He actually Latinized his name. And he came up with the nested taxa that I showed you before, that there are several phyla within one kingdom. Right? There's several classes within one phylum. And he came up with what's called binomial nomenclature, which is the scientific name that we give all organisms. So for instance, humans are Homo sapien. Fruit flies are Drosophila melanogaster. So on your test, you should be able to know how to write the scientific name of an organism correctly. The genus name, it's always the genus species name. The genus name is always capitalized and the species name is always lowercase. And the whole name either has to be in italics or underlined. All right, and again, with taxonomy, we assume that organisms in the same taxon are more closely related. So obviously, all organisms of the same species are very closely related and they can interbreed. But if 2 species are different but are in the same genus, then we would assume they are very closely related, more closely related than a species in a different family. All right, so how do we decide taxa? How do we decide the groupings? And it's really been up to characteristics of a taxonomist's choice. And again, this sort of goes back to the morphological definition of species versus the biological definition. And you know what? Usually morphology works just fine on a practical level. And so the original taxonomic tree was really not a bad classification system. However, the more we deal with molecular genetics, the more we can analyze DNA, the more little idiosyncrasies we come across where the morphological definition of species or the morphological groupings just don't quite work. So the goal is to put all the groups, decide all the taxon that make taxa that reflect the organism's evolutionary relationships with each other. All right, a word that I am